Hello and welcome to EXP Monthly. I'm Filbert. If this is your first time catching this video, EXP Monthly is essentially a book club but for video games. Each month a different game is selected, which as a community everyone's encouraged to play, talk about, stream if they like to stream, and we end the month with a podcast discussing the game and a lot of community interaction with chat as that discussion goes on. So this month is August 2025 and we're covering Fear. First Encounter Assault Recon. So this game is a first-person shooter. It came out in October of 2005 for PC, then had releases on both the Xbox 360 and PS3 the following year in, I believe, both October and November. So a little bit about Fear. Again, it's a first-person shooter. It was released by Monolith Studios, who our first EXP Monthly was on Shogo, another first-person shooter they released back in '98. So I think it's going to be a very cool aspect of this month to kind of compare and contrast and see the evolution of not just first-person shooters, but Monolith and their game design over that 7-year period. Now, a really cool aspect of Fear, there's a couple prominent features I want to kind of point out. So it is considered a psychological horror shooter. Now, that isn't necessarily new. Even in 2005, I would argue like a lot of OG shooters were like very horror based. You know, you have the Doom, like obviously stuff like Doom and stuff, but even those, you had like that power fantasy, which this still has, but I do think this really does try and bring in that psychological horror aspect. It almost tries to bring in that cinematic experience of like seeing stuff, and it's not just you're fighting monsters and undead and demons. It's like stuff is paranormal stuff is kind of going around. So I do think in that regard, it is an early game to kind of really tread into that, especially when it comes to like a first person shooter, which I think was a very interesting game to design back then. Now, some prominent features that are noteworthy to point out with Fear is this is 2005, so it uses reflex time, which is essentially bullet time. And if you are not aware, maybe you're a little bit younger, after The Matrix came out in 1999, it brought us bullet time, and for a long time that was spoofed through much of the early 2000s in movies. Like any comedy or parody was always doing bullet times, but a lot of video games started to use it, but not as a parody, but as a mechanic. And for me, when I think of early bullet time games, I'm thinking of Dead to Rights and Max Payne, and these are games where you usually had a mechanic where you could like jump through the air and it would slow the game down, so you could still like aim quick, but the game would go slow motion until you hit the ground. And Fear has its own take on this, where you still move at normal speed and reflex time, and everything else is slowed down. And it's obviously always like fun, because that's like that power fantasy where it's like that makes you super powerful, being able to move around like the Flash when everyone else is moving slow. So it adds a power fantasy. It's cool, but it also makes the game, allows them to make enemies harder, the game harder, because you can utilize this tool to overcome that, especially at higher difficulties. And not very many games have done stuff like the reflex time. Others have come and gone, but Fear, I think, was definitely like the pioneer of taking bullet time, but kind of changing it from a gimmick to a really cool mechanic. Now, along with reflex time, I was just talking about AI and difficulty. I have not played much Fear since it released, other than in college we played a ton of Fear Combat, which they released a free version that was a multiplayer only. We used to play that in college all the time, doing LAN parties with it. But that said, leading up to this, I've watched a little bit of Fear. Some of my friends have started to play Fear a little bit early before this month, and the AI in this game is fantastic. They like flank you, they use smoke, they use tactics, and I think the AI is, especially for 2005, is crazy how good and tactical it is. And again, to deal with them, you have to sometimes utilize that like reflex time. It's not just like a crutch or a gimmick. It's a tool in your arsenal to overcome challenges the game's going to throw at you. And I think it's that impressive, even in today's standards, that you need to point out like how interesting this AI is. And as you play it, or as you watch people play it, really take note of what the AI is saying, how they're moving, how they're using things like smoke and flanking. And the last aspect of big prominent feature of Fear is the melee system. So again, before 2005 and even after with a lot of shooters, but especially before 2005, melee was always like a last resort or an afterthought. And you meleeed when you're out of bullets. It was either incredibly weak, or some games, and this was usually a little bit after Fear, like I'm thinking of Call of Duty, like melee would be like a one-hit kill, because it's like the enemy shouldn't just let you get that close. You slice your knife, you kill them one hit. Fear made melee like viable. It made it fun. Your melee's impactful. Going back to those college years, it was so fun to run up and just jump and drop kick people. That was like one of our favorite ways to get kills and frags in that game. And I think it's like worth noting there's some depth to the melee system in Fear. I believe like different weapons. Like if you're hitting someone with pistols, it's weaker than if you're like hitting them like with the butt of a big gun. But you also have like the melee, again, like the running drop kicks and stuff. And it feels good. It feels impactful. And it's something that we really had not seen before. Other things to note with Fear, there are 2 expansions, Extraction Point and their Perseus Mandate. I believe if you buy Fear on either GOG or Steam, it comes with the Platinum Edition that includes both the expansion packs for the month of August. I plan to play through both the expansions, but by no means is, if you want to just play the base game, you can. And just like any EXP Monthly, if you just want to sit back, relax, watch other people talk about it, take part in the discussion. Again, talking a little bit more about Fear, when I would have played it way back in 2005 or 6, and this was on my brother's gaming computer. So I've mentioned this many times. I grew up primarily a PC gamer. Besides the GameCube, that was like the main time I was like console player. So this was tail end of the GameCube. But for most of my PC gaming up until 2004 or 5, it was always a family computer. Windows 3.1 computer, a Packard Bell, a Windows 95, and then an XP machine. And you guys playing RTSs or playing games like this, but getting like 15 frames a second, because I'm playing on a family computer without a graphics card. So my brother's computer, he built as a gaming PC, and it was like the first computer I was playing that had a dedicated graphics card. When I think of like those early PC games, like playing a game I normally couldn't, and then playing like at max settings, because again, when Fear came out, it looked amazing in 2005. It still looks good today, in my opinion. But I think of Fear and I think of Far Cry, playing those on that computer. But when it comes to Fear, I don't remember much. I remember like some of the enemies. I think there's like these guys that like jump on walls and shoot electricity. I remember, of course, like the classic girl in the red dress. I am very confident I would have beat it. That said, I don't remember. It's just been so long. I don't really remember much about the story. I want to say like at the start, like in the first mission, you're deployed with a squad and they all get like killed besides you. That might be a false memory. I might be thinking of some other game. So it is going to be nice in the aspect of it's going to very much be like a first time playthrough. And I think the last thing to bring up with this month EXP Monthly is Fear is put out by Monolith. The first EXP Monthly game we did last month was Shogo, also put out by Monolith. Shogo came out in 98. Again, this came out in 05. So I think it's going to be really cool to compare and contrast how both Monolith has developed as a studio in FPS games, and then the genre. Because when we talked in our podcast on Shogo, I think Shogo was the first like fully 3D shooter that I remember playing that has a skeleton, has a structure. It's still a little bit clunky and rough in some areas, but it feels good to play. It's fun to play. A lot of what we recognize now in the genre was in that game. Not to say it was necessarily like the first, but I think seeing that skeleton kind of get fleshed out with Fear, because by 2005, that 3D FPS was definitely figured out. I think it's probably true for any like first-person shooter on this era. It's gonna feel pretty close to home playing. There's not gonna be too much different, too much tweaking when it comes to controls or gameplay philosophy. So yeah, that is this month's EXP Monthly. I hope to see you in the Discord. I hope to see you jumping in streams and participating in the podcast at the end of the month. Again, I'm Filbert. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for playing, and I'll catch you next time.